He was a poor mechanic with only 1,500 Nigerian nairas in his pocket. When he saw a girl dying inside the bush, her phone still ringing, her blood sinking into the red earth, he could have ignored her. He could have walked away. But he stopped. And that single decision made him the most wanted man in the city. Because the girl he rescued was a billionaire's missing daughter. Before we continue, please like and subscribe. The evening breeze was heavy. Not the kind of breeze that brings relief, but the kind that carries bad news. The sky above the lonely express road was slowly turning dark orange, like fire hiding behind clouds. Far away, trees stood like silent witnesses to people's pain. The road was almost empty, except for the occasional motorcycle rushing past like it had somewhere important to be. James Okoye dragged his toolbox along the roadside. His shoulders were tired. His stomach was empty. His heart was tired too. Tired of hoping. His whole body smelled of petrol, engine oil, and disappointment. He wiped sweat from his face with the back of his palm. His hand was stained black. Not because he was dirty, but because life had made him that way. James checked his pocket for the third time. 1,500 Nigerian nairas. That was all. That was his hunger money. That was transport money. That was the money he was supposed to take home to his mother, Mama Ruth, in the village so she could buy gari and soup ingredients. But a client had called earlier. A man with a rushed voice and fake panic. "Guy, beg help me. My car don't spoil for that quarry road. I dey go catch flight. If you come now, I go pay you double." James had believed him. 'Cause poor people always believe hope. Hope is their only luxury. So James locked his small mechanic shed, boarded a taxi, and came all the way here, carrying his toolbox like it was his last prayer. But when he reached, there was no car, no man, no hazard light, nothing, just silence, bushes, dry wind, and crickets singing like they didn't care if a man's life was breaking. James brought out his phone. No signal. He tried calling the number again. "The number you are calling is currently not reachable." James closed his eyes. He sighed from the deepest part of his chest. Again. Life had done this to him too many times. Every time light appeared, darkness followed it quickly. James turned to walk back toward the main road. And that was when he saw it. Something near the bush. Half hidden. First he thought it was a sack. Then he saw a shoe. A woman's shoe. His heart stopped. His breathing became heavy. James dropped his toolbox and ran. And there, lying on her side, half inside the bush, was a young girl. Her long hair was scattered across her face. Her clothes were dusty and stained. Blood was slowly soaking into the red earth beneath her body. And her phone was still ringing. That sound was the most painful thing James had ever heard. Call nobody answered. A life almost slipping away. James knelt beside her. Madam. Can you hear me?" No response. Her lips were pale. Her breathing was weak. James touched her neck with 2 fingers. Pulse. Faint. But it was there. She was alive. And suddenly, fear rushed through him like cold water. He had no money. No car. No hospital connection. No one in this world cared about a poor mechanic. But something stronger than fear stood up inside him. Something that sounded like his mother's voice. "My son. No matter how hard life is, don't let your heart become wicked." James swallowed hard. He carried her. Her body was light. Too light. Like death had already started counting her breaths. James staggered with her, sweat pouring, muscles burning, his legs shaking. He walked toward the main road like a man carrying destiny on his back. After almost 20 minutes, a bus slowed down. "Stop. I beg, stop." The driver hesitated when he saw the girl's condition. But the desperation in James' eyes forced him to open the door. They rushed her to the nearest hospital. And James stayed. He waited outside the emergency room. With empty pockets, but a full heart. Hours later, a nurse finally came out. "She will live." James sat down on the hospital floor and cried. Not small tears, real tears. 'Cause he knew. He had just saved someone's life. But James didn't know whose life it was. He didn't know that this girl was about to turn his suffering into a miracle. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and hot afternoon air. The ceiling fan was turning slowly, as if even it was tired. James sat outside Grace's ward for 3 days. 3 days of fear. 3 days of hunger. 3 days of praying. His stomach twisted like rope. But he didn't leave. Nurses watched him. Patients passed. Relatives came and went. Yet nobody came for Grace. No mother. No father. No friends. Nobody. It was like she was alone in the world. James used his little money. Not plenty. But all he had. He paid part of her bill. He bought drugs. He bought pap and bread. He stayed awake at night when mosquitoes attacked. And when Grace finally opened her eyes, her voice was weak. "Where am I?" James leaned closer. "You're safe. Hospital." She stared at him for a long time. Her eyes looked expensive. Not just beautiful. Expensive. But James didn't notice. He only saw pain. "Who are you?" "My name is James." Grace swallowed. "You saved me." James nodded slowly. Her eyes filled with tears. "My name is Grace." He tried to think. Her brows tightened. I can't remember anything else. No memory of the road. No memory of what happened. Only pain. The doctor called it trauma. James called it mystery. One nurse pulled James aside. "Is she your wife?" James shook his head quickly. "No, ma." "Girlfriend?" "No." The nurse frowned. "Then why are you doing all this? You've been here day and night." James looked through the glass window at Grace lying weakly on the bed. His voice was quiet. "Because, if I leave her, nobody else will stay." The nurse didn't reply again. When Grace became stronger and was discharged, James had nowhere to take her. But he couldn't leave her. So he took her to his one-room apartment near the mechanic shed. The room was small. The floor was cracked. Rain entered sometimes. There was only one mattress, one chair, one small cooking stove. Grace stepped inside and smiled. "It is enough." James felt shame burn his chest. He gave her the mattress. He slept on the floor. That night rain fell. Water entered the room. Grace laughed as they both tried to move things away from the wet corner. "I have never done this before." James laughed too. And for the first time in many years, James did not feel alone. But while James was laughing, somewhere in the city, powerful man was crying. Mr. Richard Stone, the richest businessman in the city, the owner of banks, companies, estates. His daughter Grace had disappeared. 4 days he had not slept. He had not eaten. He had sent police, private investigators, security men. He had promised rewards. Nothing. Every night, he stood by the window of his mansion whispering, "Grace." He remembered the argument. Grace wanted freedom. He wanted protection. Now she was gone. And the city was boiling with rumors. Kidnapping. Runaway. Accident. No one knew. But the truth was this. Grace was sleeping on a poor mechanic's mattress, in a leaking one-room apartment. And James didn't know the storm he was sheltering. Days became weeks. Grace healed slowly, like someone learning how to breathe again after almost drowning. First she barely spoke. She moved around the room quietly, as if she was scared that any loud sound might bring back the pain she escaped from. But with time, her strength returned little by little. Her wounds faded. Her eyes became brighter. And one morning, James noticed something that made his chest feel warm. Grace smiled. It wasn't a big smile. It was small and careful, like she didn't fully trust happiness yet. But it was real. She began helping James with little things around the house. When he came back from work tired and smelling of engine oil, Grace would be waiting outside the room, sitting on the broken plastic chair, watching the road like she had been doing it all her life. She would stand up quickly when she saw him. "You are back," she would say softly. James would answer with a weak laugh. "I'm always coming back. Where will I go?" Sometimes she washed clothes with him outside. James would tell her to rest, but she refused. "If I stay idle, my mind will start thinking too much," she said. So James let her wash. He watched her kneel beside the bucket, rubbing soap into his shirts, her hands moving with determination even though they looked too soft for hard work. He could tell she wasn't used to suffering, but she didn't complain once. She even cooked sometimes. Small meals, not fancy food. Rice and stew when James could afford it. Indomie with egg when money was tight. And on days when hunger was louder than pride, they ate Gary and groundnut, sitting on the floor like poor people who still believed laughter could defeat the world. One evening, the sky grew dark early and rain began to fall gently, tapping the roof like quiet footsteps. James and Grace sat together inside, sharing the last groundnut in the bowl. The room smelled of wet earth and kerosene. Grace was chewing slowly, but her eyes were far away. James noticed her silence. He had started to recognize that look. The look people wear when their mind is fighting memories. "Grace," he called gently. She blinked and looked up. "Yes. You've been quiet." Grace forced a small smile. "I'm fine." James didn't press. He had learned that some pains open only when they feel safe. So he continued eating, pretending he didn't notice. But after a moment, Grace's hand froze above the bowl. Her voice came out low. "James." James looked up immediately. "What is it?" Grace swallowed, her eyes shining. "What if my family is looking for me?" James froze. That same thought had been living in his mind too, but he never said it. He was afraid that once the truth entered the room, everything would scatter like dust. James rubbed his palm across his face slowly, as if trying to wipe away fear. "We can go to the police," he said. Grace shook her head quickly. "No. I'm scared." "Scared of what?" James asked carefully. Grace hesitated, then whispered, "I don't know. Just don't feel safe. Something inside me is warning me." James stared at her. He could hear the tremble in her voice. He could see it in the way her fingers gripped the bowl like it was the only thing holding her steady. James reached out and touched her hand. "Then we will wait," he said calmly. "We will do it your way." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "You don't even know me." James smiled faintly. "I know you were dying when I found you. That's enough for me." That night, James slept lightly on the floor, but his mind refused to rest. He kept thinking about who Grace really was. How someone could be dumped in a bush and nobody came searching. How her phone could ring and ring while she lay there bleeding. Something was wrong. Something was missing. Then, around 4 a.m. it happened. Grace screamed. The sound tore through the darkness like a knife. James sprang up immediately, his heart pounding as he rushed to the mattress. "Grace!" Grace was sitting upright, trembling violently. Tears poured down her face. Her breathing was fast, desperate, like she was still running from something in her dream. "No, no, no," she kept whispering. James sat beside her. "Grace, look at me. You're safe. Talk to me. What happened?" Grace shook her head, holding her skull like it would break apart. Her voice came out weak, almost like a whisper. "I remember." James felt his throat tighten. "Remember what?" Grace's eyes lifted to his, full of fear. "My father." James leaned closer. "Yes." Grace swallowed hard, then forced the words out. "My father is Mr. Richard Stone." James felt as if the room suddenly became too small for air. That name hit him like thunder. Everybody knew Mr. Stone. The richest man in the city. A man whose power reached everywhere. A man people feared without meeting him. James stared at Grace, his brain refusing to accept it. You're his daughter." Grace nodded, tears falling. "Yes, I am Grace Stone." James stood up slowly, walking 2 steps away like his legs couldn't carry the shock. "Jesus!" Grace wiped her tears. James. I ran away that day because we fought. He wants to control my life. My movements. My choices. Everything. James turned back. How did you end up in that bush? Grace's face tightened in pain. I remember rain, shouting, a car, headlights behind us. Her eyes widened. And men. James' chest tightened. What men? Grace's voice broke. They followed me. I don't know why. Then everything went black. Fear filled the room like smoke. James finally understood. Grace wasn't just lost. She was hiding. And whatever happened to her might return. Grace reached for his hand like she was drowning again. I don't want to go back yet, she pleaded. Not like this. Please. James looked around his small room. His poor life, his struggling mother in the village, his empty future, and the billionaire's daughter sitting on his mattress. Trouble could crush him. But James remembered the bush. The blood. The ringing phone. The way her life was almost gone. He nodded slowly. Okay, he said. We'll take our time. Grace's shoulders dropped with relief. She cried again, but this time it wasn't fear, it was gratitude. And that night James did not sleep. He sat outside on the broken chair, watching the road, feeling like fate had gently grabbed him. Not to destroy him, but to redirect him. And just as he feared, the storm was coming. The next morning, Grace borrowed James' phone. James was sitting on the floor, tying the lace of his worn-out slippers, preparing to go to the workshop. Grace stood near the window, staring outside like someone who could hear danger approaching from far away. Her face looked calm, but her hands were not. They trembled slightly, betraying the storm in her chest. James, she called softly. James looked up. Yes. Grace swallowed. I want to call my father. The room went quiet. James felt his heart tighten. He had known this moment would come. He had been waiting for it and fearing it at the same time. Because once that call was made, everything would change. You're sure? He asked. Grace nodded slowly. I can't keep hiding forever. James stood up and handed her the phone. Okay. Grace held it like it was heavy. She dialed a number from memory. Her fingers shook as she pressed the last digit. Then she raised the phone to her ear. The line rang once. 3 times. Then someone picked up. Grace's voice came out like a whisper, fragile and small. Daddy. Silence. A long silence. Not because the call didn't connect, but because the man on the other side had stopped breathing properly. It was the kind of silence that happens when a heart breaks and tries to mend itself in the same second. Then a sound came through the phone. One shaky breath, almost like a sob. My baby. Mr. Stone's voice cracked. Grace, is it you? Grace's eyes filled with tears immediately. Yes, Daddy. It's me. A choked sound escaped him again. Where are you? Are you hurt? Who took you? Talk to me, Grace. Grace wiped her face quickly. Daddy. I'm safe. Someone helped me. James looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. This was a family reunion he didn't belong to. Mr. Stone's voice became urgent. Send me your location now. Don't move. Don't leave that place. Grace ended the call and looked at James, breathing hard. It's done, she whispered. James nodded slowly. Okay. But deep down, he knew the street was about to witness something it had never seen before. Within 1 hour, it happened. At first, James heard the sound of engines from far away. Deep, heavy, powerful engines. It didn't sound like the normal cars that passed their area. This one sounded like money. Then the street shook. Black cars entered like a parade of authority. 5. 7. A convoy so polished it looked out of place in their dusty mechanic neighborhood. Security men poured out like ants, wearing black suits and dark glasses, their eyes sharp like knives. Police sirens screamed behind them. People began to gather immediately. Neighbors came out with wrappers tied anyhow. Children climbed fences and stood on water drums to see better. Who be that? Na who dey come? Ah. This one no be normal people oh. Grace stepped outside slowly, her legs weak. James stood behind her, his chest tight, sweat forming on his forehead even though the morning was cool. Then the lead car door opened, and a man rushed out like he had forgotten he was a billionaire. Mr. Richard Stone. He didn't walk with pride. He ran with panic. He ran like a father whose world had been missing. The moment he saw Grace, he stopped breathing properly. His face changed. His eyes filled with tears that refused to respect his reputation. My child. My child. He grabbed her and pulled her into his arms so hard Grace almost lost balance. He held her like she might disappear again if he blinked. Daddy, Grace sobbed. Grace. My baby. Mr. Stone cried openly. Do you know what you did to me? Do you know how I searched? Do you know how I suffered? Grace held him tightly. I'm okay, Daddy. I'm here. Then slowly, Grace turned her head. Her eyes found James behind her. James froze. In that small moment, everything they didn't say passed between them. Gratitude, fear, attachment, and the painful knowledge that this was goodbye. Mr. Stone followed her gaze. His eyes narrowed slightly. Who is he? Grace wiped her tears and said softly, the man who saved my life. Mr. Stone looked at James like he was seeing him for the first time. Mechanic, ill-stained clothes, worn slippers, dust on his shoulders. Yet this was the man that held his daughter's breath in his hands and refused to let it go. Mr. Stone walked toward James. James' knees felt weak. He almost forgot how to stand. The billionaire reached him and took James' hands firmly. Thank you, Mr. Stone said. James lowered his head. I only did what was right, sir. Mr. Stone nodded slowly. You did more than you know. Grace was surrounded again. Security officers guided her into the car gently like she was glass. Mr. Stone looked back at James one more time, then entered the car too. The convoy drove away, and the streets slowly returned to normal. But James' world didn't. He walked back into his room and stopped. The mattress was empty. The room felt too quiet. The walls looked like they were mocking him. For the first time in weeks, the space felt cold again. James sat down on the floor and stared at nothing. He told himself he should be happy, but his chest ached like someone had removed something important without warning. 3 days later, a black car arrived at the mechanic workshop. Samuel, James' friend, almost fainted. James. See motor oh. Big men day come. 2 men in suits approached James. Mr. James Okoye. Yes. Our boss would like to see you. James entered the billionaire's mansion like a man entering another universe. The floors shined. The air smelled expensive. People moved softly like noise was forbidden. Then Grace ran toward him. James! She smiled brightly like she had been waiting. James' heart jumped. Mr. Stone sat in his office and spoke calmly. James, you saved my only child. I want to change your life. James swallowed. Sir, I didn't do it for reward. Mr. Stone nodded. I know. That's why you deserve it. He offered him help. Money for a business, a house for Mama Ruth, training, education, a future. James broke down and cried like a child. But before the miracle could settle, the city began its wicked talk. The mechanic is using her. He planned everything. He's after money. He trapped the billionaire's daughter. Blogs dragged out old photos of James in dirty clothes, laughing at his past. People mocked him. People insulted him. Some even said he was dangerous. And powerful enemies of Mr. Stone watched closely. If they couldn't hurt the billionaire directly, they would hurt the poor man who saved his daughter. One morning, James was blocked on the road by strangers. Car stopped in front of him. 2 men stepped out. One leaned close and whispered, "Stay away from Grace Stone." James' throat went dry. "And if I don't?" The man smiled calmly. "Then life can become very hard." That night, Grace found James quiet, staring at the wall. "What happened?" she asked. James told her everything. Grace's face turned pale. "They're threatening you because of me." James nodded. "I'm scared." Grace held his hands tightly, tears forming in her eyes. "Don't leave me." James looked at her and whispered, "I won't." But danger didn't stop at threats. Became action. One night, James was driving home when a vehicle blocked the road suddenly. Loud hit. Glass shattered. His car spun. His head hit something hard. And everything went black. James woke up in a hospital bed. At first, he didn't understand where he was. The air smelled like medicine and bleach. The ceiling above him was too white, too clean, too quiet. A machine beside him was beeping softly, like a slow reminder that he was still alive. His head felt heavy, like a stone was sitting inside his skull. The pain wasn't sharp, it was deep, slow, and stubborn. He tried to move, but his body refused. Then he heard a sound. Soft crying. James turned his eyes slightly. Grace was beside him. Her face was swollen from tears. Her hair was rough, like she had been running her hands through it all night. When she saw his eyes open, she gasped and held his hand tightly, as if she was afraid he would disappear again. "James!" she whispered, her voice shaking. "Thank God." James tried to speak, but his throat was dry. His lips barely moved. "Grace." She leaned close. "Don't talk too much. Please." James swallowed. His mind tried to gather the pieces of the night. The road. The headlights. The sudden hit. The glass. Then darkness. His eyes moved again. Mr. Richard Stone stood near the window. Not sitting. Not calm. Standing like a lion in a cage. His suit was still perfect, but his face was not. His jaw was tight. His eyes looked darker than usual, filled with anger so deep it looked dangerous. The billionaire wasn't shaking, but the air around him felt like it could break. "They tried to end you," Mr. Stone said, his voice low. James blinked slowly. "Because I saved her." Mr. Stone nodded once. "My enemies." Grace squeezed James' hand tighter, her tears falling onto his skin. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." James turned his head slightly to look at her. Even in pain, his eyes were gentle. He shook his head slowly. "Don't be. I would still save you again." Those words entered the room like a knife. Grace's lips trembled. Her eyes closed as she cried harder. Mr. Stone stared at James. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then he exhaled like a man whose heart had just been forced to accept the truth. Because in that moment, Mr. Stone finally understood something he had never fully understood in his world of contracts, deals, and power. This boy did not help Grace because he wanted money. He helped her because his heart was clean. And a clean heart was rare. Very rare. James stayed in the hospital for days. Doctors came and went. Nurses checked his drip. Grace refused to leave his side, not even to sleep. Sometimes Mr. Stone would leave to make calls, but he always returned, always checking the door like he was guarding James' life himself. The city, however, did not rest. Rumors moved like wildfire. Some said James was attacked because he wanted to marry above his class. Some said he staged everything. Some people even laughed, saying, "See what happens when a poor man wants to enter rich people matter." But Mr. Stone was no longer quiet. This time he was ready. 2 days later, while James was still healing, Mr. Stone called a huge event. Not just small gathering. A real city-shaking event. Invitations went out to media houses, business leaders, government officials, pastors, traditional rulers, influencers. Everybody that mattered in the city. The hall was massive. Bright lights. Big cameras. Security everywhere. People came with expensive clothes and curious faces. Many came to gossip. Some came to see drama. But what they got was truth. When Mr. Stone stepped on stage, the hall went silent. He held the microphone like a weapon. "My daughter was missing," he began. "Many of you know that." Murmurs spread like wind. Mr. Stone raised his hand, and the murmurs died instantly. "But what many of you do not know," he continued slowly, is who saved her life. People leaned forward. Cameras zoomed in. Mr. Stone spoke clearly. He told them everything. The lonely road. The bush. The blood. The ringing phone. The poor mechanic who could have walked away, but didn't. He told them about the hospital. How James stayed. How he paid with his last money. How he carried Grace like she was his own blood. How he protected her even when he had nothing. The hall became so quiet you could hear breathing. Then Grace stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were wet. "This man saved my life when I was dying," she said boldly. "And if anyone thinks he is unworthy because he is poor," she paused, "then the world is blind." People gasped. Some covered their mouths. Some stared at the floor in shame. Then Mr. Stone said the words that shook the entire city. "James Okoye is not just a good man." He paused. "He is my son." The hall exploded. People shouted. Some stood up. Some whispered, "Ah, Jesus." Grace's tears flowed freely. James, who was watching through a live screen at the hospital, froze completely. His heart felt like it would burst. Mr. Stone continued, his voice softer now. "I lost my wife many years ago," he said. "Since then, I have been alone." He looked directly into the camera. "But today, I choose my son." That was the day everything changed. The same people who mocked James started praising him. The same doors that were closed opened. The same mouths that laughed became silent. And the enemies who attacked James began to disappear, because Mr. Stone's power had finally turned fully toward protection. When James recovered, Mr. Stone did more than promise help. He acted. Mama Ruth was brought from the village. A new house was built for her. Not later. Immediately. James' old suffering ended like a chain breaking. James returned to his village and did not forget where he came from. He built boreholes so women would stop walking far for water. He built a small clinic. He built a school. He opened a mechanic training center for boys who were like him, boys with talent but no chance. He offered scholarships to children who were hungry for education. Mama Ruth would sit in front of her new house and cry every morning. "My God, you remembered me." One evening, James stood before Mr. Stone, his heart beating fast. "Sir, I want to marry Grace." Mr. Stone stared at him, then smiled softly like a man who had finally found peace. "Then prepare." Grace cried the moment she heard. The wedding happened in the village first. Under open sky, drums, joy, rappers, dancing and tears. Then it happened again in the city, where wealth met humility and power bowed to love. And on the wedding night, as Grace rested her head on James' shoulder, James whispered, "If I had all the money in the world but no heart, I would still be poor." Grace smiled and whispered back, "And if I had all the wealth in the world but no kindness, I would have died in that bush." They held hands. And somewhere in the darkness of the world, destiny smiled. Because one poor mechanic stopped on a lonely road. And kindness opened a door money could never buy. So if you're listening to this story right now, let it remind you of one thing. Sometimes your breakthrough is not in who you know. It is in the good you do, when nobody is watching. Because the same road that looks empty today might be the road where destiny is waiting for you. If you watched this story to this end, please tell us where you're watching from in the comment below. Like this video and subscribe to this channel so you won't miss our next interesting story.